Alright guys, today we are looking at visual perception principles. What are visual perception principles? They're basically the rules we use to help us organise and interpret visual information. So we spoke about the fact that our brain has to interpret things. These are the rules that our brain uses to interpret what we see. So it helps us make sense of what can be inconsistent and incomplete imagery. Now, specifically today, we're going to be looking at Gestalt Principles, where we organise to a whole image. So here, you can see this image. You can either flip between two different images. You can either see the tree with the birds above, or you can see a gorilla and a lion. So, Gestalt Principles allow us to organise parts of an image to form a whole, complete image. We look at figure ground organisation, closure, similarity, proximity, and let's start with figure ground organisation. So this is where we sort visual information into a figure that stands out from the ground. So the image we saw before with the tree and the gorilla and the lion. You could see one or the other, depending on whether you saw the black or the white as the figure and the other as the ground. If you saw the white as the figure and the black as the ground, you would have seen the gorilla and the lion. The line between the two we call a contour. Alright, so here in this image you can see one of two things again. You can either see a vase in which the figure is white and the ground is black, or you may see two faces where the figure is black and the white is the background. Now, camouflage is when we are not able to distinguish between figure and ground. In other words, no contour exists. So here, you may or may not be able to see a man. I'll give you a minute to have a look. Can you spot him? There's no contour around him, so it's hard to notice his head here, his arm standing behind a rock. Closure. Closure is to mentally fill or ignore gaps to create an image as a whole. So for example, in this image, you see these are circles. We're closing this gap here. You see this is a whole triangle. You're closing the gap that's here. Or you may see a triangle along here. In actual fact, nothing exists at all. Here in the soccer ball, you imagine that there is a line that goes all the way around here, when in actual fact, nothing exists. So you're seeing it as a whole. You're mentally filling gaps. Same with the dog here. There's actually nothing there where the white is, but you are filling it in with your brain. So this is called closure, because you close the image to make it a whole. Similarity refers to perceiving parts of an image that are similar as being together in a unit, group, or whole. So here, there's a whole lot of dots. You're going to see these as lines. Now they're not actually lines, but because they are all similar, empty or full, you perceive them as lines. So you group them together. Similarities can be shape. So it might all be the same shape that creates that line. Color, which is what you've done in this instance. Size and texture. So here's some examples. Shape. You see these as all being the same in a group, with the exception of the square because it is a different shape. Similar here with colour. These are all the same colour, they are all the same. You see them as one image and a standout here. Alignment we're not going to talk about, but there's an example there. Size, you can see this little square is actually a lot smaller than the others, so you perceive it as being different from the whole. And you can see value there, but value can also be similar to texture, so if it had a different texture to it. And we actually use this to test for colour blindness. So you might have seen something like this. So the dots are slightly different colours, but all the same shape. So those who are colourblind won't be able to identify the number. It all just looks the same. Just for those who want to play at home, this is a 7, 13, 16, 8, 12, and 9. All right, proximity. I'm sure you can take a guess. Proximity, particularly at the moment, you know you have to keep a large proximity of people, is to do with distance, how far away things are from one another. So when it comes to Gestalt principles, proximity is the tendency to group together things that are near each other. So here in A, you see these as a block of one thing. All right, so these circles you see as one big square. Whereas here, because there is a bit of a distance between them, you will see them as 3 individual blocks of dots. We can use this to do things like when we see these little LED lights. We see it as a hand because they're closer together, so it creates lines in our brains. All right, so have a go and see what Gestalt principle you think each letter shows. Let's go through those. So this first one is closure. Closing the gap here and closing the gap here to turn it into a G. Proximity, you're seeing all these little squares close together are forming the letter E. You could also say similarity there because there's a bit of colour. Similarity here, they're all the same lines, and therefore, because they're all similar, you are bunching them together to create your T. And figure and ground. The background is white and the figure is black. Now, as I said, you can apply some of these principles to more than one. All right, can you go off and have a go at the learning activities? Enjoy.